Hello, everyone. I'm Bo from Brutal Commentary, and today I'm going to be bringing down our next matchup for UFC Fight Night 263. In this one, we have Charles Radtke taking on Daniel Frunza. Radtke is 10-5 as a professional, 3-2 in his last 5 fights. Meanwhile, Frunza is 9-3 as a professional, 4-1 in his last 5 fights. For Radtke, he was on a good a good 2-fight win streak, beating Mike Mateta or Blood Diamond at UFC 293. Then got a good knockout win over Gabriel Ubina last February. Then suffered his first UFC loss to Carlos Prates last June. And then in his most recent win, destroyed Matthews Selensberger last November, where he just rushed him and destroyed Selensberger in about 50 seconds. Unfortunately for Radtke, he's coming off a loss to Mike Malott at UFC 315 this May, where he got knocked out. Meanwhile, for Frunza, he's coming off his first UFC loss, which was also his UFC debut, when he got TKO'd by Reese McKee this April. Now, that was via doctor stoppage, but that was a pretty, in the first round, but honestly, it was a pretty bleak sight for Frunza, as he got dropped like 4 times in that round and had his lip split open. Like, we're talking Robbie Lawler, Roy McDonald split lip. It was bad. Now, before I delve deeper into this fight, I will say this might be my sleeper of the card. Or I take it back. This is my banger of the card. As while I think Garcia versus Onama, which is the main event, is the best fight on the card by a million miles, this honestly right here, I think will be the most exciting fight on the card, as these two are knockout artists. Radtke and Frunza constantly go for the finish. And you look at their records, for example, Frunza, he's only won 1 fight via decision. The other 8 of his wins are by knockout. Meanwhile, for Radtke, he's won most of his fights via knockout as well. Of his 10 wins, about 7 of them are by knockout. So these two constantly hunt for the finish, and I think we're going to expect some fireworks in this fight. That's honestly what I'm thinking. It's going to be a banger, quite possibly fight of the night. Now, specifically looking at their styles. For Charles Radtke, he's pretty well-rounded, I would say. He has some good wrestling and pretty good takedown entries. That's how he was able to beat Blood Diamond, by mostly out-wrestling him in that fight. And overall, pretty good top control. I would say Radtke's best takedown entries would be his double leg. And often does a pretty good job of clasping hands together, get elevation, and then dump his opponents on their back. And from there, he has pretty good control and ground and pound. But really, a lot of Radtke's best attributes would be his striking. Radtke is a very good close quarters boxer and has some really good power in his hands. Specifically, Radtke's left hook is his best strike. And you see, he doesn't throw it wildly like some other fighters I've said who kind of swing bombs, big overhand rights, looping hooks, that kind of stuff. You see, Radtke actually keeps a good compact guard, cuts good angles, and is pretty good at closing the distance, and actually fires a good short left hook. And at times, it's not just the hook he opens up with. Radtke's pretty good with his combinations, a jab, cross, and then the left hook. Or he's pretty good at setting up the left hook by throwing out some of his other strikes, like his cross, for example, or setting up with his jab, then off the half beat, just switch to a hook. You saw it, for example, with Gabriel Ubina. Once Radtke started to find the defensive lapses in Ubina's defense, I know that sounds redundant, but just work with me here. You could see once Radtke found the opening, he unloaded with the left hand, and from there he had Ubina hurt, and it was he smelled blood in the water and went for it. Same with Matthew Selensberger. The moment Radtke was able to touch Selensberger with that left hand and rocked Selensberger, it was pedal to the metal and no brakes whatsoever. Meanwhile, for Daniel Frunza, I would say he has pretty good distance striking. Now, he's going to be the bigger welterweight in there at 6'1" with a 73-inch reach. Frunza has pretty good straights and counter hooks. That's mostly what his striking style comes to. And that's how he gets a lot of his finishes, is when opponents get overzealous and Frunza is able to catch him with, like I said, that counter left hook or counter cross. But at the same time, Frunza's pretty good at being the aggressor when need be, especially once he has his opponent hurt and follows him to the ground from there. Frunza has really good ground and pound, specifically really good elbows from mount. And I guess another big thing I would say is for Frunza is, while he does not show much offensive wrestling, his defensive wrestling isn't bad. He's shown pretty good ability to get up from bottom positions and has pretty good hips for his sprawls. Now, that being said, his defensive wrestling is not the best. He's shown some glimpses of it before, and it's not too bad. And his offensive wrestling isn't really there either. Now, when I look at this fight, I think it really comes down to, can Charles Radtke close the distance? Because he's going to be a shorter fighter in there. He's 5'9" with a 72-inch reach. And one of the things about Radtke's striking is that while at times he's pretty good at not overcommitting with his strikes and getting caught with the counters, he doesn't always set up his left hook, like I've said. Now he has some good setups for the left hook, and sometimes I recently saw a post on this. I can't remember who it was from, but sometimes the best strike you can throw doesn't necessarily need a setup. As you see with, like, I don't know, Alex Pereira, right? Phenomenal striker. You see sometimes with his left hook, he doesn't always set it up with his feints and traps. Sometimes he just kind of throws it, and it catches his opponents off guard because he's such a seasoned striker and so good at making his opponents have to pay attention to his feints and his overall hand position, that if he just fires his power shot, oftentimes his opponents are delayed in their reaction, and he catches them. Now, I'm not comparing Charles Radtke striking to Alex Pereira, but the point I'm trying to make here is that sometimes sometimes Radtke firing that left hook is really all he needs to catch his opponents, and doesn't necessarily need to always set it up. That being said, of course, you want to see, like, good striking. How do I want to say this? Sometimes you want to see fighters, like, set up their strikes and with pretty good feints and movement. And Radtke doesn't always do that at times. And there are times, like, for example, Mike Malott did it to him at UFC 315, where Radtke can be kind of caught up in the moment and be caught when he's mid-commitment and throwing his strikes. And you saw when Mike Malott, you noticed how the 1-2 would get blocked, but there was an opening for the hook. So Malott eventually went from a 2-piece combination to a 3-piece combination, throwing the jab, cross, and then the hook. That's what caught Radtke. So there are times, like I said, Radtke can be caught when he's mid-commitment to his strikes, and he doesn't always set up his strikes very well. But sometimes you don't need to. As I said, sometimes just throwing your power shot when your opponent least expects it works. Now, as I said before, it's going to be up to Charles Radtke to close the distance, as Radtke has a sort of brawlers-like mindset. Close the distance, use his aggression, and get inside. As once they get into boxing range and or the phone booth, I think Radtke's overall going to be the better striker in those moments, especially if he's able to land good body shots or be able to throw, like, say, body hook, then move the hook to the head. Those are some combinations I can see Radtke opening up with in this fight, as well as I think he's going to be more well-rounded and the better wrestler than Frunza. Now, the question is, can Frunza, keep Radtke at range? Because if Frunza is able to fight at his preferred distance, which is that long to medium range, then I think he's going to be able to pick Radtke apart for most of the fight. But once again, it really comes down to Radtke being able to close the distance, but also being able to close the distance intelligently. Keep a good guard, have good head movement overall, and implement some of his wrestling to catch Frunza off guard and keep Frunza guessing, like, oh man, is he going to go for the striking? Is he going to go for the wrestling? Just constantly keep Frunza busy and really make him, like, overthink, because there's a saying in fighting, if you are thinking about your next move, you're already behind. While your opponent is kind of not so much fighting off instinct, but just fighting with a set rhythm and pattern already set, and then they're going to win because they're not having that time to think, oh, am I going to go for a strike? Oh, is he going to throw? If Radtke can get Frunza to overthink, then I think he's going to win this fight. Another thing also, I think Frunza just doesn't have really good striking defense. Now, granted, Reese McKee is much taller and has a better reach than Charles Radtke. In fact, he was bigger than Frunza. But you saw Frunza didn't really have good striking defense. And once he got hurt, granted, credit, Daniel Frunza is a warrior and he fought through getting knocked down 4 times. But you saw that he was there to get hit a lot. And the only times that he wasn't was when he started to use the clinch. I think with Radtke having the wrestling in his back pocket, in comparison to Reese McKee, who isn't as good of a wrestler, I think that's really going to help Radtke have Radtke make Daniel Frunza make a lot of lapses in defensive judgment. And therefore, I think Radtke is going to be able to land a lot of a lot of strikes in this fight. I also think Charles Radtke hits a little harder than Reese McKee. And so, like I said, I think Daniel Frunza is kind of there to be hit. I think that's going to leave Radtke with a lot of openings to hit with even more power than what Frunza had to deal with in his last fight. So, for my official prediction, I'm going to go with Charles Radtke, and I'm going to pick him via KO. I can definitely tell you, I don't think this fight is going the distance, no matter if Radtke wins or Frunza wins. I think this is going to end via knockout for one of these two. Odds-wise for this fight, Radtke is a minus 145 to the plus 115 Frunza. And I honestly, like I said, I think knockout is live in this fight, no matter who you pick, whether you're going for the underdog or the favorite. So once again, my official prediction, I'm going to go with Charles Radtke, and I'm going to pick him via knockout. But with that being said, that's been my breakdown of this fight. If you like the video, comment and subscribe. Let me know what you think of this prediction. Next up, we will have Isaac Dalgarian taking on Yadir Divala. But until then, I've been Bo from Brittle Commentary. And thank you all for listening. Take care now.